The moment my daughter, her face, a mask of serene righteousness sculpted by years of curated wellness mantras, told me I was a parasite, I didn't feel anger. I felt a strange, cold sense of release, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying, the crushing, invisible weight of her secrets, had just been lifted from my soul. She was kicking me out of the house I had saved for her, a house built on a foundation of lies she believed were long buried beneath the rocky, unforgiving soil of coastal Maine. She wanted freedom, a life unburdened by the living, breathing reminder of her greatest shame. What she failed to understand in her pursuit of a flawless narrative was that I held the key to the cage she lived in, and I was about to lock the door from the outside. She threw my suitcase as if it were a bag of spoiled fish, a thing of rot and disgust. It hit the damp, gray-shingled porch steps with a dull, final thud, bounced once with a soft wheeze of escaping air, and came to rest against the cluster of dying hydrangeas. Their once vibrant blue heads were now brown and brittle, a mirror of the affection that had once bloomed in this very spot. I stared at it. The suitcase was soft leather, a faded burgundy, the same one I'd used when I moved in 5 years ago to help her raise her baby. Back then, her nights were filled with the shrieking cries of a colicky infant and her own tears of exhaustion. Her mornings were desperate pleas for my strength, my help, my presence. Now, she just stood there, arms crossed over her expensive cashmere sweater, her expression sharp with something far colder than rage. It was indifference, a practiced, hollow void. "You're holding us back, Mom," she said, her voice smooth and polished like a line from one of the self-help podcasts she consumed daily. "Me, Marcus, Leo, all of us. You've made this house your prison, and we're done being your inmates." The words were absurd, theatrical, yet delivered with the conviction of someone who had rehearsed them in front of a mirror. I blinked. The salty North Atlantic air felt sharp and clean against my face, a stark contrast to the stale atmosphere of resentment that had thickened inside the house for months. No tears came. I was far past that. Tears were a currency of grief, and what I felt now was something else entirely, an awakening. She wasn't finished. The performance required a final act. "You have 3 days to leave. I have already spoken to a locksmith. He's coming on Friday." I looked down at the suitcase. A corner of my old, folded gray sweater was sticking out of the broken zipper like a pale, tired tongue. I bent over slowly, my knees groaning in protest, and picked it up. The handle creaked under the weight of the few possessions I had left in the world. My hands didn't shake, but hers had all those years ago, when she'd first begged me to move in. Her hands had trembled as she'd clutched mine, her eyes wide with fear and desperation, the perfect picture of a damsel in distress. 3 days? I repeated quietly, standing upright and meeting her gaze, which flickered for a fraction of a second. Her tone became clipped, annoyed that I wasn't collapsing into a dramatic scene of weeping and begging. My compliance was ruining her moment of righteous empowerment. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she ordered. "Harder for whom, Chloe?" I asked, a genuine curiosity in my voice. "For all of us," she snapped, a tiny fissure appearing in her serene facade. It wasn't the righteous anger of the oppressed breaking free. It was the sharp, panicked fear of being questioned, of losing control of the narrative she had so meticulously constructed around herself. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned and walked past her, down the worn stone steps, the suitcase's wheels thudding a mournful rhythm behind me. Each roll on the gravel driveway was a little quieter than the last, a fading heartbeat. She didn't call after me. She simply closed the heavy oak door, the decisive click echoing in the damp air. I stopped at the curb beside her ridiculously oversized SUV and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I dialed one number, a number I knew by heart. My financial advisor, Mr. Davies, answered on the second ring, his voice a familiar steady baritone that had guided me through decades of financial uncertainty. Beatrice? Yes, Mr. Davies, it's me. I watched a fog bank, thick as cotton batting, roll in from the sea, preparing to swallow the picturesque harbor. I need you to begin the process of removing my name as co-signer and guarantor from the mortgage on 14 Harbor View Lane. There was a pause on the line, but it was not of surprise. Mr. Davies had managed my meager finances for 20 years. He had drafted the documents for the secret settlement. He knew where all the bodies were buried. "Are you sure, B?" he asked, his voice softening with genuine concern. "She's asked me to leave," I said, my voice flat and devoid of self-pity. "I'm not staying where I'm not welcome. I just need you to start the paperwork today." "Understood," he said, his tone shifting from personal to professional, crisp and efficient. "I will begin the withdrawal process, but you know the terms of the guarantee you structured. Once your name is removed, she will have 30 days to refinance the loan in her own name. Given her credit history, that will be challenging." "She wanted freedom," I said, the words tasting like salt and iron, as I stared at the house she now considered solely hers. "I'm just giving her a taste of it." The motor lodge I found was a relic from another era, tucked away off the highway like a forgotten secret. It had peeling paint, floral curtains that smelled of dust and time, and a buzzing fluorescent light in the bathroom that flickered like a dying heartbeat. I laid the burgundy suitcase on the bed and stared at the careless jumble of my life inside. She had folded me out of her world like I was a cluttered, inconvenient napkin on her perfectly curated minimalist table. The truth was, the house was never truly hers. Not legally, not morally. She had never been approved for that mortgage alone. At the age of 20, she had incinerated her credit history in a fiery, twisted metal wreck on a dark country road. It was the kind of incident they hush up in small, tight-lipped New England towns. The kind where prominent names are kept out of the police blotter, if you know how to ask nicely, and, more importantly, pay quietly and completely for the silence. The memory suppressed for a decade rose unbidden. The shrill ring of the phone at 2 a.m., her voice a choked, hysterical whisper. "Mom, I messed up. It's bad." My frantic drive to the county hospital, my heart hammering against my ribs. The sight of her slumped in a plastic chair in the emergency room, her face pale and streaked with tears. A single cut above her eye. The state trooper, a man with tired, pitying eyes, explaining the situation. She had crossed the center line. She had hit a minivan. A child was in surgery. Her blood alcohol level was just over the legal limit. The next few weeks were a blur of cold dread. I met the other family, the father, a grim-faced lobsterman, the mother, her eyes hollowed out by grief and rage. Their 5-year-old son was alive, miraculously, but he had a shattered leg and a long, painful recovery. They wanted justice. They wanted Chloe's future to be as broken as their son's body. And so I did what I had to do. I drained my life savings. I cashed out my retirement account. I took out a second mortgage on my own small home. I hired the best lawyer in the state, a man who specialized in making problems disappear. He negotiated a private, out-of-court settlement. The number was staggering, enough to secure my daughter's freedom and my permanent state of financial precarity. Chloe pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, reckless driving, which was sealed due to her first offender status, no criminal record, no jail time. I had bought her a clean slate, paid for in the currency of my own future. When it came time for her and Marcus to buy their own home, the bank laughed at her loan application. Her credit score was a ghost. So I stepped in again. I became the guarantor. I became the cosigner. I became the invisible scaffolding that allowed her to build her perfect life, the one she now paraded on social media as a testament to her own strength and resilience. She had been grateful at first. There were tears, hugs so tight they hurt, whispered promises of eternal devotion. But gratitude, I learned, has a shelf life. It soured into resentment. My presence became a constant, uncomfortable reminder of her weakness, of the night she had failed so spectacularly. My quiet competence became an indictment of her own fragility. The digs started small. "Mom, that's such an old-fashioned way of thinking. Don't be so dramatic." "Mom, it's just a..." Tuesday, 8:12 p.m., served leftovers from Lucky's bowl, poured directly into mine. Brenda watched me eat the first bite before turning away. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Brenda told Rob I was getting paranoid because I asked where the fresh bread was. She'd hidden it in the garage freezer. Thursday, 6:47 p.m. Found another order confirmation email open on her tablet. http://quapetsupplideluxe.com, recurring monthly order. Took photo. Each entry felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about proof. Because women like me, old women, we don't get believed when we speak. We get called senile, dramatic, bitter. But no one argues with a time-stamped photograph. That week, I used my own secret bank account, an account Brenda knew nothing about, to order a second simple smartphone. I had it delivered to the corner pharmacy under the name of an old friend. I picked it up on a Tuesday afternoon when Brenda was out getting a facial, an activity she deemed essential for her self-care. It was time to tell someone, and I knew exactly who. That night, I waited until the house was dark and silent. Then I opened my hidden phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. After 3 rings, a young male voice answered, sharp and clear, despite the late hour. "Hello?" I said softly. "It's Grandma Clara." There was a pause, and then the immediate shift from sleepy confusion to alert concern. "Grandma, is everything okay? Why are you calling from this number?" I took a breath, my hand steady on the phone. "No, sweetheart." I whispered, the words finally finding their way out. "Not exactly. Your aunt is feeding me dog food, Leo, and she thinks I'm too old and too stupid to notice." By the time I ended the call with Leo, my heart was still thudding, not with fear, but with a resolute focus. He had always been the perceptive one, the grandchild who watched more than he spoke, the one who saw the flicker of annoyance in Brenda's eyes when everyone else saw a dutiful smile. Now he was a second-year law student at Indiana University, and he was my last best hope. "I'm coming this weekend, Grandma," he'd said, his voice low and tight with a controlled fury. "Don't tell anyone I called. Don't do anything different. Just act the part. I'll handle the rest." I waited, but I didn't sit idle. Using the library computer during my walks, I became a quiet detective. I uploaded the photo of the barcode and entered it into a product lookup site. The result was instantaneous. Doggy's Gourmet Din Din Chicken Pea Stew Bulk Pack, 24 cans. And underneath the promotional copy, in small, bold letters, "Not for human consumption, intended for canine use only," it listed the ingredients: meat byproducts, bone meal, artificial flavorings, and a host of chemical preservatives. The clinical, blunt reality of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just neglect. This was poisoning. Slow and deliberate. I dug deeper. I found the supplier's website. HTTP would say, www.google.com/searchq with Pet Supply Deluxe. Come, just as I suspected, Brenda hadn't logged out of her account on the family tablet. Her order history was a damning indictment. A recurring monthly subscription for the gourmet dog food. The cost was staggering. She was spending more money to feed me animal-grade mush than it would have cost to make a simple pot of real human stew. That was the detail that stopped my breath. This wasn't about saving money. It wasn't about convenience. This was about power. It was an act of intentional degradation. I gathered my evidence with the patience of a spider weaving a web. I uploaded the photo of the barcode and entered it into a product lookup site. At Wes, HTTP was a www.google.com/searchq Pet Supply Deluxe. Come, just as I suspected, Brenda hadn't logged out of her account on the family tablet. Her order history was a damning indictment. A recurring monthly subscription for the gourmet dog food. The cost was staggering. She was spending more money to feed me animal-grade mush than it would have cost to make a simple pot of real human stew. That was the detail that stopped my breath. This wasn't about saving money. It wasn't about convenience. This was about power. It was an act of intentional degradation. I gathered my evidence with the patience of a spider weaving a web. I took a sample of the food to my old friend Marcy, a retired nurse who worked part-time at the pharmacy. She confirmed it, her face a mask of horror. "Clara, this isn't just wrong," she'd said, her hand on my arm. "This is illegal. This is elder abuse." She agreed to write a signed, notarized statement. When Leo arrived that Saturday, he didn't come to the house. We met at a small coffee shop in the next town over. He was taller than I remembered, his jaw set with a new, adult determination. I handed him the manila folder, neatly labeled Family Photos. He opened it and went through each document in silence, his expression growing colder and harder with every page. The invoices, the screenshots of Brenda's social media posts about caregiver burnout, the photo of the barcode, Marcy's notarized letter. He closed the folder and looked at me, his eyes full of a righteous fire. "Okay, Grandma," he said, "here's what we are going to do. We don't go to the police yet. We don't want a messy public fight that she can spin. We want a confession. We want leverage. We are going to host a family intervention, but they won't know they're the ones being intervened upon." He grinned, a flash of the clever boy I remembered. "We need an occasion. When's Uncle Rob's birthday?" The birthday party was Melissa's masterpiece of suburban performance. Streamers in silver and navy, a cake so polished it looked plastic. Every chair perfectly arranged. The guest list was tight but significant. Rob's siblings, their spouses, a few cousins, and 2 of Rob's senior partners from his accounting firm. Enough people to witness a celebration or a complete and total detonation. I was seated in my usual spot, the corner chair by the patio doors, an afterthought. Melissa floated around the room in a cream-colored silk blouse, laughing too loudly, refilling wine glasses, the perfect hostess. Rob stood beside her, looking stiff and distracted, a man already sensing the ground shifting beneath his feet. Then, just after the cake had been cut, Leo stood up. He didn't carry a briefcase, just a slim leather folder, and a small portable projector. "If I could have everyone's attention for a few minutes," he said, his voice calm and commanding. "I've put together a little family tribute for Uncle Rob's birthday." A few people chuckled. Melissa beamed, thinking it was a loving surprise. Leo plugged the projector into the wall, and the room dimmed. The first image flashed onto the pale gray wall. A bright, cheerful logo for HTTP was www.google.com/why will Pet Supply Deluxe? A confused silence fell. The next slide, an order confirmation for Doggy's Gourmet Din-Din. A few forks clinked against plates. The air grew thick. Next, a close-up of the ingredients list with the words, "Not for human consumption," highlighted in a menacing red. Then a photo of me, sitting at that very dining table, a bowl of the brownish mush in front of me, with Lucky's identical bowl in the background. The room was utterly still now. The silence, a living entity. "For the past 3 months," Leo began, his voice devoid of emotion, a prosecutor laying out the case, "my grandmother, Clara May Thompson, has been knowingly and repeatedly served pet food by her daughter-in-law, Brenda Harris." He said her name slowly, deliberately, letting it hang in the air, like a verdict. Brenda shot to her feet, her face flushing a blotchy Remsen. "This is disgusting. This is a lie. She's confused." Leo didn't even look at her. He advanced to the next slide. A spreadsheet. "Here are the credit card statements. Over $2,000 spent on these gourmet meals. Meanwhile, grocery receipts show barely enough food purchased for 2 adults. Because you see, the refrigerator was often locked at night." A collective gasp went through the room. Rob's sister covered her mouth with her hand. One of his business partners stared at the screen, then at Rob, his expression of pure disbelief. She's an old woman," Brenda shrieked. "She forgets things. She's making it up." Leo turned to me. "Grandma, has any doctor ever diagnosed you with dementia or significant memory loss?" I stood up slowly, my back straight. "Deserve peace, not pity. And I certainly do not deserve poison." Leo turned off the projector. The light faded, but the truth remained stark and indelible. In the suffocating darkness of that room, no one applauded. No one cheered. They just sat in the wreckage, forced to finally look at the ugliness they had permitted through their own silence and willful ignorance. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely, blessedly full.